The October 11th, 2016 regular meeting of the Mentor Exempted Village Board of Education is called to order. This meeting is being held in accordance with Section 3313.15 of the Ohio Revised Code. Mr. Wilson, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Briner?
Here.
Ms. Jisling?
Present.
Mr. Shaw?
Here.
Mr. Tuttle?
Here.
Ms. Miller?
Here. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I would like to welcome everyone to the October 11th, 2016 regular meeting of the Mentor Exempted Village Board of Education. Prior to this evening, each board member has received for their review and consideration the agenda and materials associated with each agenda item for the board's approval via the district's paperless Board of Education agenda system known as Board Docs. The public can access the agenda through the school district's website. The agenda is available through the district's website for public viewing the Sunday prior to the board meeting. Board members have the opportunity to call the superintendent and chief financial officer for information concerning agenda items and to request, if needed, additional information. There are two places on the agenda when the board entertains comments from the community. The first hearing of the public is dedicated to those who wish to address the board on agenda items only. The second hearing of the public is dedicated to those who wish to address the board on any subject, whether it is an item on the agenda or another issue. When addressing the board, please state your name. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. Please address the questions to the president. This meeting is being televised on a delayed basis and will be shown on the Time Warner Cable Channel 96.96 in Mentor and Channel 96.22 in Mentor-on-the-Lake. This meeting is also being videotaped and will be shown on our YouTube channel, Cardinal TV, Mentor, Ohio. Please place your mobile telephones on silent mode during the meeting. And I ask for a motion to approve the minutes of the September 13th, 2016 regular meeting and the September 29th, 2016 special meeting.
So moved. Second.
Mr. Wilson, can you call the roll, please?
Mrs. Briner?
Yes.
Ms. Jisling?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Mr. Tuttle?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes. And at this time, we'll have a hearing of the public on agenda items only. Anyone? Okay, thank you. Mr. Miller, would you like to give the superintendent's report and recommendations?
Thank you. Good evening, Madam President, members of the board. I have the following recommendations listed under the consent agenda and recommend approval of items 5A1 through 5A5.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Wilson?
Mr. Tuttle?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Mrs. Briner?
Yes.
Ms. Jisling?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Thank you. Madam President and members of the board, we are very proud tonight to recognize our National Merit semifinalists and commended students this evening. Mr. Fetchick, along with Mr. Shaw, will make the presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Miller, Madam President, Mr. Wilson, and members of the board. I'm going to call all of the students up by name. I'm going to read a little bit about each designation first, the commended and the semifinalists, and then as you come up, I believe Mr. Shaw has a certificate for you, and then we'd like you to line up in front so we can get pictures and celebrate your success. So we're very proud. First off, the commended students. This is directly from the National Merit Scholarship Corporation. About 34,000 commended students throughout the nation are being recognized for their exceptional academic promise. Although they will not continue in the 2017 competition for National Merit Scholarship Awards, commended students placed among the top 5% of more than 1.6 million students who entered the 2017 competition by taking the 2015 PSAT exam. So I just want to repeat that. The top 5% of more than 1.6 million students. So These are certainly some of the best and brightest Mentor has to offer. So we'll start with Rachel Beller. She's here. Come on up. Andrew Davis, who is not unable to attend this evening. Wayne Ho. Wayne, are you here? Wayne's not here. I do need to make a correction. Rachel and Wayne are semifinalists, so I'm going to keep them up here. I'm going to go with the semifinalists first, then we'll bring the commended up second. And I'll read a little bit about the semifinalists next. Alexis Mealy, are you here, Alexis? Nope. Christopher Wynn. Nicole Wallstrom.
Very proud of you.
And Josh Wisely. The students that were just recognized, I'll tell you a little bit about their semifinalist category. About 1.6 million juniors in more than 22,000 high schools entered the 2017 National Merit Program. They did so by taking the PSAT exam. The nationwide pool of semifinalists, representing less than 1% of U.S. high school seniors, includes the highest scoring entrants in each state. To become a finalist, the semifinalist and his or her high school must submit a detailed scholarship application in which they provide information about the semifinalist's academic record, participation in school and community activities, demonstrated leadership abilities, employment and honors, and awards received. A semifinalist must have an outstanding academic record throughout high school, be endorsed and recommended by a high school official, write an essay, and earn SAT scores that confirm the student's earlier performance on the qualifying test. In February, they'll be notified of their designation. The Merit Scholar designees are selected on the basis of their skills, accomplishments, and potential for success in rigorous college studies without regard to gender, race, ethnic origin, or religious preference. So one more time, our semifinalists. Now I'm going to call up our commended students, if you guys want to grab a seat. Start with Sonia Anyufriyanko. Megan Arumpanil.
Very proud. Congratulations.
Kayla
Very proud of you.
Berezny. Jack Shaley.
Very proud of
Thomas Cromes.
you. Very proud of
Jillian Gunch. Jessica Languth.
Very proud of
Alex Lee.
Very proud of
Jonathan Nichol.
Congratulations.
Not here. And Carmen Toth. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, our semifinalists.
Grab them and take a group picture. Would you mind? Follow the students that were just recognized. Ms. Kirby's going to take a group photo, so if you follow first? That would be fantastic. If moms and dads want to go too, it's not a bad idea either.
Congratulations.
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 Good students. You should be proud.
Congratulations. Congratulations.
Okay. At this time, we get to recognize our PTA and PTSA presidents. We all know the importance of parent involvement in our school. This group has been really beneficial, I think, for the administration, for the course of the district over the past several years, just their involvement and being a great sounding board and being very receptive to ideas and providing input. And I can't thank them enough for the time that they put into their schools, but the district overall. For many years, the PTA has given endless hours of service to our students, staff, and community, and we commend them and thank them for the many projects and their tireless dedication, things that come up all the time in schools that they come up with or bounce off of our principals who are here tonight to see this recognition as well. Can't thank you all enough for, A, for being here, but B, for all you do for our kids, so thank you. So tonight, we're going to recognize them. I'm going to call them up and mention the school that they're at and get some recognition here from Mr. Shaw as well. So we will start tonight with Bellflower PTA President Ann Horvath. Ann? Next up, Michelle Godick, Brentmore PTA President. Thank you. Kelly Bellin, Fairfax PTA President.
Thank you for everything you do.
Dave Plumley, Garfield PTA President.
Thank you for all you're doing.
Kristen Mignona, Hopkins PTA President. Melissa Guerra, Lake PTA President.
Thanks for all that.
Thank you. From Orchard Hollow, PTA President April Helsberger. Thank you. Sterling Morton, PTA President Rachel Tabone. Moving on to our middle school PTAs from Memorial, Debbie Cole. Thank you. Ridge PTA President Melissa Fatica.
Thanks for all you're doing.
We'll clap for her anyway. Shore PTA President Mickey Pugh. One year I did, I remember that. All right, thanks. And last and certainly not least, and she reminded me this is her last year to do this because her youngest is a senior. So this is the last time we get to recognize at the board meeting, perhaps, Teresa Ackerman, Mentor High School PTSA.
Thank you for all you're doing.
Thanks. One other person we'd like to recognize, she's not here, is Taryn Winnie, who is our Lake County Council, and I think she's the president of Lake County Council, yes, and she couldn't make it tonight, but we should recognize her as well, so. I would ask at this time if the PTA presidents wouldn't mind going down to the Cardinal Room where Kristen's taking a group photo of the kids, and yes, you also get a group photo as well, so if you wouldn't mind doing that right now, if that's okay, that'd be great. So thank you for all of your support of our schools. All right, at this time, Madam President, members of the board, I'm recommending approval of new policy 8.15. It's a second reading with one slight change under uniform grant guidelines, adding the phrase, and I think you have it in front of you, or collateralized
Yep.
into the vernacular there. And if that's acceptable,
So,
present that to the board.
so moved.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Ms. Jisling?
Yes.
Mr. Tuttle?
Yes.
Mrs. Briner?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Thank you. Madam President, members of the board, I'm recommending approval of agenda item C1 related to certified personnel, C2 through C5, as well as the addendum item C6, which was distributed this evening, all related to human resource matters.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Wilson, please call the roll.
Ms. Jisling?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Mrs. Briner?
Yes.
Mr. Tuttle?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm also recommending tonight approval of agenda item 5D related to administrative personnel.
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Tuttle?
Yes.
Ms. Jisling?
Yes.
Mrs. Briner?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Thanks. That concludes my portion of tonight's agenda.
Is there any business that needs to be discussed? Mr. Tuttle, do we have a legislative report?
I'll make this brief. In the current House-passed version, House Bill 410 addresses truancy and reducing the root causes of students' absence by creating absence intervention teams who will then develop individual absence intervention plans for students deemed to be habitually truant. While OSBA supports the overall concept of the current legislation, OSBA does not support the bill. And top of the list there, I'll just read the first principle of concern to them, and that's the lack of resources in both personnel and finances to support the absence intervention efforts and teams. I'm not going to go beyond that. There's more to that, but this is at the top of the list as far as I'm concerned because it's just one more unfunded mandate thrust upon schools that in many cases can't afford to do that. It requires additional staffing, and you don't hire additional staffing without funding. So I would ask the board, though, if you would consider, we have a resolution and for next month's meeting to review, written perhaps by Dan and Mr. Miller, in our objection to some of these bullets and stand up and speak out against those things that the OSBA does not agree with. So there's no need for a vote, but I think the next meeting will be perfect timing because they'll come back from their summer break, lame duck session. They're going to move really quickly on this, I believe. They can't get it done before. Okay.
One
Thank
of
you.
the things I wanted to mention regarding this particular House bill was that, you know, our district, like others, have always followed up with students who have attendance issues. So it's certainly not something that isn't already being done, and it's effective for the vast majority of students. And I would like to see if the legislature is keen on strengthening attendance requirements and that accountability piece, that students who attend online would have some sort of an accountability measure applied to them as well, that to make sure that their parents, since they've taken that responsibility on, are overseeing their children's work so that they can be successful students as well.
I think that's wonderful. Add that to the resolution? Put that as a bullet item in the resolution?
That will
Very
be
good.
especially timely, as you may know from some of your reading, the online school ECOT was determined to not be properly logging whether or not students were using the online system or not, and the Department of Education is trying to recoup $60 million from them. And there's a lot of discussion, although Matt's professional organization or mine don't believe something will surface in the lame duck session. There's still some concern and some buzz about that. And the core issue is whether or not to hold attendance standards consistent with the online option that's more than someone just logged in, that there was actually activity and how long that activity occurred, so.
And not to mention too, the legal fees, I think that'll be associated with the lawsuit on both sides. That's going to come out of the public coffers as well. But something that continues to be a hot topic. I think too, I communicated to the board about, there's a group of superintendents talking about making some statements at Capitol Conference in November, so that's still unfolding, and I included that in my latest two updates as well, but certainly board involvement would be helpful as well, in addition to the letter.
I'll work with Matt on drafting up a resolution around House Bill 410 and
Just back to the absence intervention team, I believe that the law, the way it's written now, covers everything. It's just the word team that isn't there. I read the new law and the old law, and there is very little difference. It's just a lot more paperwork.
And then,
And that's time-consuming, money, everything else. So.
and secondarily, them adding the additional rules to disciplinary methods and so on that have to do with student suspensions.
Right, discipline.
When that was coming down as an umbrella policy with zero tolerance, that had one set of fallout. And I believe, and I'm sure I'm speaking in accordance with everyone, that we have faith in our district administration to apply rules and to always seek the best outcomes for our students and safety of our schools, that having it micromanaged from the state level doesn't serve anybody's purpose.
That's true. That's true. Okay, yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Wilson, with the financial report, please.
yes, it's recommended the financial statements for the month of September 2016 be accepted and placed on file for audit.
So moved.
Second. Please call the roll.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Mrs. Briner?
Yes.
Ms. Jisling?
Yes.
Mr. Tuttle?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
It's recommended the Board of Education ratify the investment transactions for September 2016 as presented in Exhibit 7-B.
So moved.
Second?
Please call the roll.
Mrs. Briner?
Yes.
Ms. Jisling?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Mr. Tuttle?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
It's recommended the Board of Education approve the appropriation modifications listed in Exhibit 7-C.
So moved.
Second?
Please call the roll.
Mrs. Briner?
Yes.
Ms. Jisling?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Mr. Tuttle?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
It's recommended the Board of Education approve supplemental appropriations listed in Exhibit 7-D.
So moved.
Second?
Please call the roll.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Ms. Jisling?
Yes.
Mrs. Briner?
Yes.
Mr. Tuttle?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
It's recommended the Board of Education approve the student activity budget presented in Exhibit 7-E.
So moved.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mrs. Briner?
Yes.
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Ms. Jisling?
Yes.
Mr. Tuttle?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
Yes.
And I am withdrawing item F, the payment of invoices. We're awaiting response on 2, and we'll present those next month. And that completes my items for this evening.
Thank you. Mr. Miller, you have unfinished business or business? New
Yeah.
business?
We'll do it under new business. Just want to
Okay.
take 30 seconds. Thank you, Madam President. Just take 30 seconds to acknowledge the Board of Education. Recently, just last week, at the OSBA, Ohio School Boards Association Northeast Region Awards Assembly, they recognized Mentor Schools for 3 things. One was the Interactive Historical Wax Museum from last year's Capitol Conference, in addition to the construction management class as well, and also for last year that they recognized and sent a plaque along with some of you that were able to attend the conference on the national level, NSBA, for Jordan Zimmerman's story, how technology tools support all students. So I want to thank you for your support of our kids, our programs, and when we get something like that from OSBA, I just wanted to mention it here. And also to Mrs. Briner for her involvement at the state level with OSBA as well. So thanks, and thanks to Mr. Porter, and Mr. Wilson, and Ms. Miller, and Ms. Jisling for being able to go and accept on the board's behalf.
And
That was longer than 30 seconds. But
a special thank
Pretty
you
good for
to
me.
all the staff members who were part of those initiatives, you know, from classroom teachers to administrative level, and it made us really
it
proud.
was good.
Very
So,
proud, very
Good things for kids.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
I
you.
have one new business item.
Yes.
As you know, no later than October 31st, we're required to adopt new 5-year fiscal projections. We're progressing through that now. We'll be done with revenue tomorrow. I'm working with Matt on staffing projections going out, but would ask if the board's available to meet to approve on the either morning or end of the day of October 28th or October 31st. Again, it'll be a relatively brief meeting. We'll have hopefully a recommendation from the Finance Committee, who gets in deeper on behalf of the board into assumptions and calculations. So
Okay, were you thinking morning or afternoon? I'm sorry.
either one, whatever works for the board.
Do you know what days of the week those
So
are?
Friday and Monday.
Friday, Monday. I'm good on both.
Good for both.
I can do both.
I'm good. Either one.
Either one?
How about 7:30 on Friday, the 28th?
Right
Work.
after dinner.
No longer than 30 minutes.
Correct.
That's a good way to end the week.
Friday the 28th.
I'm an AM.
Oh, I hear
That's
you.
AM, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought he meant. All right, all right.
Thank you very much.
Anything else?
How much I love that.
Nothing else? The second hearing of the public, does anyone have any questions or anything they'd like to share? All right. Then the October 11th meeting, regular meeting of the Mentor Exempted Village Board of
Need a
Education.
motion second.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was,
Jumping in.
Motion?
Second.
Mr. Tuttle?
Yes?
Mr. Shaw?
Yes.
Mrs. Briner?
Yes.
Ms. Jisling?
Yes.
Ms. Miller?
yes, is adjourned.
So we're doing